Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Alex.
As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E Fantasy. We are also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are discussing the second wave of free agency and also what is left on the market. But first, we had some exciting trades happen. Jeff, what happened?
Yeah, kind of a quiet time for the NFL other than transactions. And so the league news here, we have a couple of trades. The first one is a former favorite of Alex's, and the Chiefs trade a 6th-round pick to acquire Jets backup quarterback Justin Fields to be their backup quarterback. Alex, do you believe Justin Fields could rehab his value and be a potential NFL starter, or is this the beginning of the end of his starting hopes?
Well, it's the first time he's ever going to have an offensive-minded head coach, so that's going in his favor. The starting quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, is still injured, and now they don't have to rush him back. They have someone who can take all the snaps in training, so I think it will help him be better, and then I think they'll find creative ways for him to get on the field. So we will see 2 quarterback sets. They both line up.
I mean, is that the weirdest thing in the world? But I could see the Chiefs do it because they do like to have fun on their offense. I've seen Ring Around the Rosie. I have seen a lot with the Chiefs, so would not be shocked.
He could be their new backup running back, too. Backup running back, third tight end, Taysom Hill.
Absolutely. We will see what happens. And we had a much bigger fantasy trade, whereas the Broncos traded their 30th pick plus 2 other mid-rounders for the Dolphins wide receiver Jalen Waddle and a mid-round pick back to the Broncos. What do you think this does for Jalen Waddle's value, Bo Nix's value, and for Courtland Sutton's value? Because I'm assuming he's the other receiver on the other side.
Well, I think this is a big boost for Waddle. I think it's a boost for Bo Nix. They're also changing play callers because Davis Webb will be the one calling plays. Hopefully it's not 70% screens or whatever shenanigans Sean Payton did. So there'll be some vertical passes and some yards after the catch. I don't think it will hurt Sutton that badly. I think he'll go down in targets, but I think he'll be more efficient and more open, less covered. So there won't be as many brackets on Sutton. So overall, I think it's better, and I think it'd be good for the run game because now defenses will have to back up a little bit. So overall, I think it's good for everyone on the Broncos. I think this is really bad for Malik Willis and his fantasy upside because now he has a bunch of virtual no names. I mean, yes, people in the fantasy community will know, Malik Washington and Jalen Tolbert and Tutu Atwell, and we can keep naming these what should be wide receiver 3s and 4s on other teams are now going to be very prominent, and we'll see which ones shake out if they address pass catchers in the draft as well, since they don't have the money anymore to sign anybody. But yeah, it's going to be rough for Malik Willis.
Yeah, we will see if Waddle is the prince that was promised. He has not quite lived up to his hype, even in times where Tyreek Hill went down. And Tyreek Hill was a star in that Dolphins offense with Tua, and Waddle just never could figure it out, even in Tyreek's absence. He now gets a shot to kind of be the one here, and we will see if he has it in him, and if it does, this is a huge boost for the Broncos, but I'm a little skeptical. I don't think it moves the needle for either team too much, but we will see in the season, and hopefully the play calling for Denver gets a lot better, because I was not a big fan of Sean Payton's play calling this last year, and he ended up firing his offensive coordinator for his horrible play calling, Payton's horrible play calling. So it was kind of a funny joke of a firing. But I think Washington steps up. I do think they draft a tight end. I think they draft a wide receiver, and I think they will target the playmakers. So a tight end that blocks is not something that they'll be interested in. They're going to be interested in someone that could catch 50 balls a season plus. And I think they could go 2 tight end sets with Dolchit and maybe Sadiq, maybe, or Stowers, or anyone that could be in that 11 to 30 range now that they have 2 picks. So will be interesting to see if they decide to help Malik out. That'll be very telling of what they expect Malik Willis to be over the next 3 years, or if they go on the defensive side of the ball.
They have a lot of needs. So
Yeah.
they could go offensive line, defensive line, secondary, wide receiver, tight end. I don't think that they'll go quarterback this time, but they definitely have a lot that they need.
Yeah, I think they would want to figure out some pieces if they decided Willis wasn't their long-term future, before they drafted a quarterback. But I will say I'm still more optimistic on the Dolphins and the Jets at this point. So that has to say something. At the end of the year, the Dolphins should be out of this dead cap fiasco that they're in, and they should have a ton of cap space going into next year, and they could actually sign a ton of free agents after this year.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they stick with Malik Willis as the quarterback or if they draft somebody.
I hope he gets a shot. I mean, that's all I really care about, is him getting a shot right now. I'm not banking on it being successful or not successful. I just would like to see him get a fair shot to be a starter in the NFL. Right. You ready to hop over to our fantasy relevant NFL transactions for the second, much smaller wave of free agency?
Or why don't we start with another quarterback?
Sure. One of our favorites, and he's still kind of young. Chargers re-sign backup quarterback Trey Lance to a 1-year deal. I think that this is really good for Trey to be in the same system 2 years in a row. I don't think he's ever going to be an NFL starter, but this is how he becomes a career backup and gets to make millions of dollars holding a clipboard and potentially play week 18 or as a injury fill-in. What do you think about the Chargers bringing back Trey?
I mean, it makes sense. He's athletic. He's familiar with the system.
Yeah,
He's young.
absolutely. Didn't they have Greg Roman last year? Isn't that more of a Greg Roman quarterback?
Yeah, but I mean, Trey Lance is insurance in case Herbert just can't get that playoff win.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the Chargers offense will surprise us with the wrinkles that McDaniel throws in there this year, because I think going from Tua to Herbert is just such a major upgrade, and that Dolphins offense was never in shambles. So I always thought the offense had it at least somewhat figured out all the time, at least an identity.
Yeah.
All right. Hop over to the running back position here. The Commanders sign running back Jerome Ford, formerly of the Browns, to a 1-year deal. All these are going to be 1-year deals coming up. Thoughts on Jerome Ford finding a new team? I think he's with Rachaad White.
Rachaad White, Bill.
Yep.
Bill.
Crowded now.
Well, and they resigned Nichols as well. So a lot of meh running backs right now.
Absolutely. Come on. When you said Bill, I just automatically think of Bill Nye, the science guy.
Bill.
Exactly. Yep. Someone needs to make a theme song for him using that. But speaking of another just pile of just guys, we have the Saints signing former Vikings running back Ty Chandler to a 1-year deal. I think what this mostly spells out for me is Kamara's time with the team is coming to an end. This is their 6th running back under contract right now. So they need to figure out the Kamara situation sooner rather than later. But we did hear that the Saints here were not using any void years this year for the first time ever, and they have completely dug themselves out of their salary cap situation that they put themselves in when Drew Brees was still around. So kind of amazing they did that, and now have a quarterback of the future, apparently.
We might have a quarterback of the future in Tyler Shock. We'll see. I would be interested if they ended up trading Spencer Rattler, but I don't think anyone is in the market at the moment.
No, and then they got to go find a backup quarterback to
Derek
go get Joe
Carr.
Flacco. Yeah, that too. Joe Flacco too. I heard the Bengals are waiting for Joe Flacco to come back around. But right now the Saints have Achane, Kamara, Neal, Miller, Chandler, Estime all under contract for the 2026 season. So 6 running backs.
Are we really going to call ETN Achan just because of that press conference?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We got 2
I
Achane.
can, I can see if you said it with a French Cajun accent, you can turn ETN into
Achane.
it's Achan, Achan, Achan. Like,
Yep.
it sounds like Achan, but it's not Achan.
Achane.
Whereas,
Exactly.
Devon Achan, the running back with Miami, should be Achane, but whatever. Whatever, we're going to have 2 Achans.
We have 3 because we have Trevor Achane.
Yeah, Trevor, Travis, Devon.
You always forget about Trevor on the Panthers. He's just
How could I
chilling over
forget?
there. He's chilling over there.
That's
All
the real
right.
reason they moved on from Dottle is they have Trevor, Etienne.
Yep. It's interesting that Brian Robinson, and we'll get to this in the who's left, but he hasn't signed it. I feel like he fills the Dowdle role perfectly for Carolina if they ever decided to get into that market. But I just wanted to piggyback on your Dowdle comment because I don't believe in Jonathan Brooks. I know we have league mates that do believe in Jonathan Brooks, but I think with 2 torn ACLs and not a lot of positive news, and I think he's entering year 3 or 4 of his deal, so his deal will be expiring relatively soon.
Let there be a lesson to everyone in fantasy. Don't draft players that are already hurt. Don't do it.
Absolutely. I saw Casey Concepcion had a knee scope this week. Does that count, or is that not quite enough for you to?
Well, it doesn't matter. I won't be having any shares of Casey Concepcion. I don't think he's as good as he's being hyped up to be. I think he's another Kadarius Toney talent-wise, skill-wise. I think he's more mature and won't get in trouble though.
Never know what Tony would have been if he would have had his head more on straight.
Yep.
But maybe we could see here. But speaking of the wide receiver position, the Commanders signed a pair of wide receivers. They bring back, after 1 season away, Jawami Brown to a 1-year deal. Same thing with wide receiver Van Jefferson, who I believe spent the last year with the Titans without looking it up. So what do you think of those 2 signings here in Commanderland?
I don't care for them because I think they're back of the roster kind of signings. I don't think that they're like apparently they're moving on from Deebo Samuel. They're not going to bring him back after trading for him.
Yeah,
I still think that post June 1 they will sign Brandon Ayuk. I think that's
possibility.
where things are headed. The 49ers have no reason to cut him until June 1st, and they're holding out for a trade apparently, which is not going to happen. No one's going to trade for him.
Nope.
So they'll eventually cut him, and he will go to the Commanders most likely. I feel like the Commanders could make another move. I don't know if they will. They're kind of short on draft capital for this season.
Yeah, I really don't like what they've done the first 3 years of Jaden Daniels' career to support him. I don't think they've given him a viable running game. I don't think they've given him a receiving option outside of McLaurin, but he was already there. And I do like Chigo. I think Chigo might be a younger version of Zach Ertz, and that would be a huge deal for Daniels. But he had chemistry with Zach Ertz. Will he have it with Chigo?
We'll see.
All right. Giants signed wide receiver Darnell Mooney, and he was with the Falcons last year. What do you think of the Giants' move here? Do you think this will spell the end of Slayton, Hyatt, someone else? Because they have quite a few receivers right now.
I think it could spell the end of Slayton, and I think it's a sneaky good addition for this team. So last week they added Isaiah Likely, who's most likely going to be the tight end one for them, although I still like Theo Johnson. So they have two viable, good tight ends. Neighbors will be coming back. Now they have Mooney. So
Mm-hmm.
that positions them where they don't have to take a wide receiver with the 5th overall pick.
Absolutely. They grabbed Kelvin Austin too last week.
That's true.
So I think they have all three of their receiver positions to start the year off set. And I think they have both tight end set, and I think they have both running back set, as you mentioned, Tracy last week with Scadaboo.
Well, apparently they want to add a third running back. And they wanted to upgrade enough that they were considering Kenneth Walker and drafting Jeremiah Love, who I think Jeremiah Love is going to go to the Titans in front of them. So I don't think that's going to happen. But it would be interesting to see if they draft someone relatively high.
Absolutely. This one's going to pain you a bit, but the 49ers have signed former Texans receiver Christian Kirk to a 1-year deal. What do you think he does in the Shanahan offense?
I think he's a sneaky good signing over there, assuming he stays healthy and avoids the electrical substation. I think he'll be really good. Pearsall, Mike Evans, Kittle when Kittle's back. They're going to be a nice grouping around Brock Purdy. A video came out of Brock Purdy talking to Christian Kirk and telling him that he watched him play and watched him get, I think it was in high school, 6 touchdowns in the first half of a game, and that he's always looked up to him. So now they are on the same team. I think there's going to be really good chemistry there.
Absolutely, and it'll be interesting to see how things shake out with that receiving core. Pearsall might be the odd man out for targets when you put CMC and Kittle in there, and people spent quite a high pick on Pearsall, and he's been through a lot since being in the NFL.
Yeah, it's normally you would think Pearsall would be the deep threat, but Mike Evans is going to be the X, and Shanahan's
Mm-hmm.
going to find a way to get Mike Evans deep. So I don't know what to do with Pearsall.
Yeah.
He's kind of like a stash and hold right now until we see how it shakes out.
Yeah, I feel for guys like I think is it Jordan Watkins or trying to think of his last name here. Uh yeah, it's Watkins and Joe Cowing. Feel for them, and they obviously have Demarcus Robinson also still, but I feel for them and Garendo and Jordan James. I just feel all these draft picks of what could have been, they just have these stars in front of them that they never get on the field to see what they are. Just the way that the business works.
I'm not so sure that those guys are that exceptional.
No, I would just like to see them get an opportunity though, and we don't even get to see that at this point. Like we thought one of the backs would back up Christian McCaffrey and they go trade for Brian Robinson before the season starts. So
Well, you know what that tells me? That tells me that their scouting department is not very good because most of their best players have been acquired from other teams.
Mhm.
Like Christian McCaffrey, I think Kittle was one of the few that was there, but I think Kittle might have predated John Lynch being the general manager. Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant
Yep.
when they already had Garoppolo that they paid, and
And
they
Trey
already
Lance.
had Trey Lance that they spent multiple picks to trade up for.
They
So, I
whiffed
mean,
on
that was like
Sermon
a
that year
happy,
too.
yeah, yep. So,
Absolutely. And it's interesting that this mastermind of the Shanahan offense, or at least the reinventor of it, cannot pick or get the right pieces.
it makes me wonder if Shanahan is even getting input on the picks or if John Lynch is making all the decisions because
That would be
it
so
doesn't make
weird.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe he gets the late round picks, and that's when the late rounders pay off. And Lynch is like, I got the first 3 rounds. You can have the last 4.
Well, it's not working.
I'm taking Jake Moody.
I mean, to an extent, Brandon Ayuk and Debo Samuel worked out,
Yeah.
right? But,
But they haven't been able to
Debo,
replace them in house yet.
yeah. So that's interesting.
Absolutely. Well, the Eagles have a third receiver who could become their second receiver if they get rid of his cousin. I don't think they're really related. This is more of a Brown joke. Wide receiver Marquise Brown has signed with the Philadelphia Eagles, and his brother, cousin, whatever, AJ Brown, is still on the team, and it seems like the Rams are out on AJ Brown. So he could very well be just the deep threat and the third receiver in this Philly offense. What are your thoughts here on Hollywood signing with Philly?
He's just another roster filler dart throw. And he would be a terrible 2, but he's a solid 3 on this team. I almost think that they would draft a wide receiver or trade for a wide receiver if they traded away AJ Brown.
That's true. He didn't do great on the Chiefs last year, and I don't know why I get flashbacks of Marquise Goodwin here, but that is kind of how I feel about this signing right now.
I feel like Goodwin was a better route runner.
Probably, but they feel like they're the burner now and just go deep.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll be their kick returner instead of, I think Devontae Smith was still doing that.
I remember when Marquise Brown wanted to get top wide receiver money, and the Ravens said, "All right, see ya."
Right? But also, now we have the law firm of Brown, Smith, and Brown. Be on the lookout for that. Brown, and Smith, or Brown, Smith, and Brown?
Or Brown squared.
Brown squared. Smith, Brown squared. All right. Moving on to the tight ends here, we have the Lions signing tight end Tyler Conklin to a 1-year deal. He should be a good backup tight end for Sam Laporta. I don't believe the Lions like to run 2 tight ends very often, so someone that should probably be on waiver wires. Any additional thoughts on Tyler Conklin?
Yeah, Lions are interesting because I think if you look at snap percentages, they don't run 2 tight ends as much as other teams, but on like short yardage and trick plays, they usually have an offensive lineman as a additional tight end. And that guy, I think Dan Skipper, I think he retired. So Conklin kind of fills that role while also being insurance to Laporta if Laporta misses time again.
That is very fair. And I think that this next signing here, the Colts re-signing tight end Mo Alie-Cox, I believe that is not that big of a deal either because Tyler Warren is the guy, and he might even be the target leader on the team this year for the Colts. What do you think of that?
Mo Alie-Cox is considered almost exclusively a blocking tight end, and he is also now, I think, the longest tenured Colt on the roster. So he's more of a locker room guy and a blocking tight end. It's good for cohesion, but the days of thinking he was going to have a fantasy relevant season are long behind us.
Goodbye. But the Eagles somehow found the money here to re-sign tight end Dallas Goedert to a 1-year deal, and I think it was only like $7 million. So nothing crazy for Goedert. Goedert was a touchdown machine last year. What do you make of the Eagles being able to re-sign him here?
Well, he took a pay cut to stay.
Mhm.
So Goddard did them a solid, and it helps them quite a bit. He knows that their roster, they're still one of the teams that are competitive and in the Super Bowl window. I think there might be a wink and a nod situation where they give him a bigger extension if they're able to move on from AJ Brown and get a decent haul for him. Because if he's traded after June 1st, it lessens the cap by 20 million, I think. So they'll have more space and like, oh, you know what, Dallas, we're gonna extend you now.
Yep, absolutely. It's just amazing they found money for both Goddard and for Marquise Brown in the budget when it was widely expected that they needed to move on from AJ Brown in order to re-sign Dallas Goddard. So they found money somewhere. Couch cushions?
Well, just like the Dolphins, who have 170 million in dead cap for this year, which is more than half their cap, still found the money to pay Malik Willis when it
The
didn't
best
seem like that
quarterback
was
out
going to be
there.
possible.
Best quarterback out there. And they're a team that could have tried to get Kyler Murray on the minimum for a year too. So that does speak some volumes.
Well, Kyler Murray is a Vikings fan, and Kevin O'Connell has a higher profile for players, and they have a better team. So I think all of those things factored in, and Minnesota desperately needed a cheap solution.
Absolutely. Speaking of cheap solutions at quarterback, we have 6 quarterbacks that remain unsigned. And I'm going to read them off to you, and we can talk about whichever ones that you want to. But it's Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Joe Flacco, Tyrod Taylor, and Carson Wentz. Do you believe any of these guys find a job in the NFL that's going to be fantasy relevant this year?
I think Kirk Cousins has a strong chance to be a bridge, but most likely a backup quarterback for a team. Particularly, I think it will end up being the Raiders. I think at this point, they're the only team that would give him a chance to start early on in the season. Aaron Rodgers, the 50-50 chance he comes back and plays for the Steelers or he retires. That's the only option for him. I kind of hope he retires, and I would love to see Joe Flacco go to the Steelers so he can complete the cycle and play for all of the teams in that division. Just, a secret little hope for me, just because it would be funny to see it happen. Although I do expect Joe Flacco to go back to the Bengals to back up Joe Burrow. Russell Wilson, I can't imagine a team is in on Russell Wilson at this point without having a significant injury to their quarterbacks. Tyrod Taylor, I think he's in a similar situation where he's going to have to wait on injuries.
Or he goes back to the Jets to back up Geno.
Do the Jets have another quarterback on the roster besides Geno?
Brady Cook, maybe?
I know that they wanted to go after Carson Wentz, but I don't know where Wentz is going to end up.
He could end up in Pittsburgh instead of Aaron Rodgers, and it could be back to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania Part 2, like a sequel.
There's rumors that Pittsburgh might be in on Simpson in the draft.
They do like Howard, apparently. So I don't know what Will Howard is or what he looks like in the NFL, and I'm not sure anyone does at this point. So
Well, I mean, Todd Monken, the new head coach for the Cleveland Browns, supposedly likes Shador Sanders, but there's a lot of rumors, speculation that they might be taking Simpson in this draft. So we'll see if any of these teams stick to the quarterback situations they have, or if anyone reaches a little bit on Simpson for his upside.
do we think teams leak this out to try to get other teams to panic and trade up in front of them so they leave better players in front of them?
That's a strong possibility. Like, you never really know, but I will say this about Simpson, and then whenever we end up covering the quarterback prospects, maybe I'll go a little bit more in depth with it. But he started off the year very good and then had an injury that affected his playing. And he played very tough, and it looked worse than what it was. And there's a lot of teams out there that say he has pro traits and could end up being a good quarterback.
We'll see on that front, but I think that some of the rookie quarterbacks out there are worth taking a risk on over some of these veterans, these old veterans, and just see what they develop into. All right. Let's split the running backs in half here because there's so many. So I'll do the first half and we'll talk about them, any of the ones that we want to. But the first one here is the guy that we mentioned earlier and wouldn't mind seeing him in Carolina, Brian Robinson Jr. and Kareem Hunt, who is an elder statesman right now. We have Nick Chubb, who's also an elder statesman, and we have Raheem Mostert, who is super old and probably checking into a nursing home sometime soon. I looked at his age on my sheet and I was like, whoa, he doesn't feel that old. We also have Miles Sanders and Austin Eckler, who's coming back from an Achilles tear, I believe. So, any of those guys pique your interest or could carve out a fantasy role on an offense.
Brian Robinson Jr. is the only one out of
Gotcha.
that group. Everyone else is dust.
Okay. Perfect. What if Brian Robinson Jr. signed with the Falcons and we have Bijan and Brian the Robinsons?
He should make his number as close to Bijan's as possible just to confuse people.
What is Bijan's number? I was just trying to think of that off when you were saying that.
Is it 7?
Sounds right. Michael Vick. Now you're gonna make me research later why he picked the number that he picked. He is number 7. So would number 1 look like kind of number 7 or 2?
I don't know. Probably 1.
There you go. That would be crazy if they did that and they both just had Robinson and he didn't have Robinson Jr. on the back. Like just
Put B. Robinson.
constant wondering of who's out there. But yeah, number 7 for the Falcons, and that's actually not a terrible idea to replace Algier. All right. Second half here, we have Hassan Haskins, Elijah Mitchell, Sincere McCormick, Najee Harris, and Antonio Gibson. Any of those guys find a home that could find some fantasy relevance?
I still want to see if Sincere McCormick could be something.
Me too.
What?
Me too, for sure.
Yeah. And Antonio Gibson, I think, could still be a viable number 2 or 3 on a team. But the other guys, I think I'm officially done with.
Yeah, I still have a soft spot for Najee. I mean, there's still that valuable second running back in Dallas that they do contribute. So that's a place that I wouldn't mind any of those players going. But I do see Gibson being viewed as a kick returner as well. I don't know how his ACL is recovering, so I mean that could impact that early on. But I believe you mentioned earlier that a receiver was their kick returner and they didn't want to get rid of him for that reason, so they could bring in Gibson if they did get rid of that kick returning receiver.
When it comes to Najee and probably missing an eye or whatever, the only team he should sign with is the Buccaneers so he can be a Pirate.
He could. It's very possible, but they seem to have enough running backs in the backfield. I could see the 49ers taking a risk on Najee as well, but he doesn't need the substation to injure the other eye.
Substation only comes for your soft tissue, muscles, hamstrings, quads, calves, ligaments.
Are your eyes soft tissue? And this is something I might be Googling tonight before bed, and eyes are definitely muscles.
I'm sure there's soft tissue, but they're not exactly what I was referring to.
The soft tissue issue, the good old rhyming game. All right, let's hop over to the wide receivers. I'll break this up into 3 here. We have Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings, Keenan Allen, and Greg Dortch is our first group here. Any of those guys that you see signing and being fantasy relevant at this point? Like I see Diggs and Hill's value going down by the day.
If Hill and Diggs didn't come with the baggage that they come with, they would still be very viable fantasy assets. Unfortunately, I don't like the risk for them. They're both older and they keep doing dumb stuff that involves law enforcement. I want no part of that. Deebo, I wonder where he could possibly go to be used appropriately. He's kind of a unique wide receiver that has to be used a special way.
Dolphins?
But he's also not been that effective. So very curious what happens there. Like he's kind of turning into the Cooper Kupp situation, where he could be a viable safety valve but doesn't get the ball enough. Juwan Jennings, I think the only reason he hasn't signed with the team is because he's asking for $20 million a year or more, and I don't think he's worth that kind of money. So maybe he signs a 1-year deal somewhere, 1 year prove it. I mean, Falcons, Giants, Titans, and these are all teams that could use his services. Maybe he can swallow his pride and go back to
and kick Pearsall further down the totem pole? Or Pearsall.
I like Pearsall, but
what about Greg Dortch here? You like Greg Dortch these days?
No. I have never been a Greg Dortch fan,
Is it just his
but
last name that bugs you, or is it something about him?
I don't like his game. I want to say he's a short wide receiver.
And he's 27. He'll be 28 in May, so he's getting towards the end for a guy that's not special.
Yeah, he's 5'7". No thanks. I don't like Wandale, but Wandale at least puts up production.
That's true.
Watch Dortch go to the Vikings and fill the Naylor role that they just lost to the Raiders.
It's not a bad move. That is not a bad move. I do think Keenan Allen does retire and hangs them up. I don't really think he's got much left. If he does that, I could see the Chargers go out and sign Deebo Samuel, who Mike McDaniel, I believe, has a history with in San Fran. He kind of would be a good replacement for that. And I also could see the Colts still sign like a Diggs or a Debo at a discount to pair with their current crop of wide receivers. So they'd probably be looking at a veteran that's cheaper. They need somebody. I don't believe in Downs and Pierce being able to take on the Pittman load, and ideally you would have Pittman and Warren there.
Yeah, there's when the second half of this list, there's some guys that could be role players somewhere else.
All right, let's hop over to the second part of the list here. We have Tyler Lockett, we have Juju Smith-Schuster, we have DeAndre Hopkins, Brandon Cooks, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and Gabe Davis. Any of these guys have any shot of making a roster and being fantasy relevant?
I think that out of that list, Brandon Cooks and DeAndre Hopkins.
Got a soft spot for him still.
Well, Brandon Cooks last year was pretty relatively effective for the Bills. Might even rejoin the Bills. Hopkins, he still has some good possession to him, but he's now like wide receiver 3 or 4 territory where he is in his career.
Situational.
Yes, I do love him, but he is no longer dominant, and he's pretty active in social media, and I feel like he will try to play one more year at least.
Can he return to Houston to be your situational fourth receiver?
I wouldn't hate it,
You'd be all for it.
but the same token, they have Nico Collins,
Mhm.
they have Noel, they have Hutchinson, and they have Higgins, I think, and then we'll see what Tank Dell is. So that would make Hopkins, in the mix there and complete the top 6 wide receivers. He would be kind of the mentor, most likely.
I think he could help Collins too. I think he could help Collins' game, which is an interesting thought too.
Yeah, maybe he could settle CJ Stroud's nerves.
Gives him a big red zone target too, which
Stroud
is
just needs a big brother.
yep, absolutely. The last group of players here are Zay Jones, Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, Nick Westbrook-Ikine, and rumored release candidate Brandon Ayuk.
I still have a soft spot for Elijah Moore.
Yeah.
His time is running out to make an impact. He's had health issues. He should have surfaced by now. It doesn't look like it's ever going to happen with him. Nick Westbrook-Ikine, I would like to see him go to a team that needed a red zone target because he's capable of it, and Miami was a bad situation for him. Brandon Ayuk, I don't know what to do with this guy because on one hand, he could have a terrible degenerate knee and never be as successful as he was a couple years ago. On the other hand, he could just really despise the 49ers organization and self-sabotage to get himself off that team and go to whatever team he wanted to. And could be very good for the Commanders. I'm not sure how I feel about him anywhere else but the Commanders.
The Rams.
No. Have you heard about the Rams wanting to trade for A.J. Brown and releasing or trading Devontae Adams?
Yeah, that was the rumor.
I feel like Devonta Adams and Stafford have such a big connection. Why would you mess that up?
They're getting younger.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think AJ Brown, with what he's been the last couple seasons, I don't know if he's still an upgrade over Devonta Adams at this point, as old as Devonta Adams is, because we don't know what AJ Brown still is. because that offense is terrible.
That is fair. That is fair. But I will say the Rams do need a third receiver to show up somewhere. So I don't know if that's an Elijah Moore type or like a Curtis Samuel type. They do need a third receiver somewhere. Nick Westbrook, Akine. They need a cheap third receiver.
Yeah. Hey, you don't have Deontay Johnson on this list?
Hey, he's been out of the league for almost a whole year now. So no more Deontay Johnson jokes. We did talk about him earlier today, though, with the fact that he's made a Pro Bowl since Waddle's been in the league, and Waddle hasn't made one yet.
I'm telling Deontay Johnson destroyed his career with how he acted with all these different teams.
Absolutely. He acted like a star. He got paid like a star in Carolina, and then the rest is history.
He played okay in Carolina. They let him move on to go to a playoff team. Playoff teams are like, you have to learn the playbook. We're not going to play you right away if you don't know the playbook. And guess what? We're a good team. We're not focused on getting you the ball. And he threw a hissy fit in multiple places. So good
Yep,
riddance.
absolutely. And last but not least, there's a few surprise names on the tight end available list here. And we have David Njoku, Zach Ertz, Darren the Baller Waller, and Jonnu Smith and Taysom Hill. Who do you think is fantasy relevant here, and where do you think they could possibly end up? I know Njoku just had his first visit the other day in Baltimore.
Which would be an abysmal place for him to go. Um,
Agreed.
Ertz, I think, is recovering from injury. Waller's only upside, in my opinion, is just being freakishly tall. Like he's just a big body. He's not fast. He's not agile. He doesn't really block, but he is a big target, short yardage or touchdowns. Jonnu Smith is a very, very athletic tight end, but he got the kiss of death in Pittsburgh with Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers, who don't really mesh together offensively. So Jonnu Smith might resurface somewhere else. I hope this is the end of Taysom Hill. But circling back to Njoku, I want Njoku to go somewhere where he will be the tight end one.
Imagine him in Miami in two tight end sets with Greg Dulcich.
Yeah. And there's a non-zero chance he could still find his way over to the Broncos at this point.
That's true. Him and Evan Ingram.
Yeah. I mean,
That'd be a little bit of a nightmare.
they can still release Evan Ingram at some point.
I know, but they talked him up and how much he's a joker for so long now.
I mean, Jonnu Smith would be pretty incredible for the Broncos.
Absolutely, but he might have some negativity of his role around the league and
I would be interested with a Jonnu Smith reuniting with Vrabel
they
in
need a
New England.
backup now with Hooper being out.
So, I mean, this tight end group is a better group than the other skill positions that we talked about. So there's a lot of viability here.
Absolutely. And we will see over the upcoming weeks that a lot of these players won't sign until after the draft just due to the comp picks that come with it. So there might be a few lingerers that skirt the comp pick formula. But a few of these guys will sign over the next couple of weeks, especially some of the younger ones.
Do you see the Chargers going after any of these tight ends? Because Mike McDaniel has coached Waller and Jonnu Smith.
I can see him trying to get Waller as a situational tight end.
I mean, they kind of have Gadsden, which is a younger version of Waller and more athletic, but
I don't
Jonnu
think
would be
him and
fun.
Jonnu ever. I don't think him and Jonnu ever jived, and I think that's why he shipped him off after one season.
I think he shipped them off because they had so many injuries and so many problems with the rest of the roster at that time that Johnny was manufacturing touches and he knew his perceived value was greater than his actual value. They didn't want to pay him. So I think that's why. But now that Johnny's gotten paid and got humbled, I think he could be a really good tight end somewhere else.
Absolutely. I mean, there's other places that I would like to see Njoku go, like maybe even like Cincinnati. I don't fully buy into Mike Gesicki. And I think Waller is down to maybe following McDaniel or retirement again. I think that's going back to Waller here. I think that's his path. I think Jonnu's about done in the league, and I think Ertz actually might end up going back to the Commanders because I think him and Jaden Daniels actually have a pretty good bond, but Chigo would obviously take over the T role, and he'd have to be more relegated to a tight end too.
Yeah, I don't know what Chigo is in Washington, to be honest with you, but he did not play with a good offensive coach.
Yeah, now he would have, but he didn't stay. Now he would have. I like what Tennessee's done this year. I really do. I don't think they're ready to compete yet, but yeah, that if you add Jeremiah Love in at running back too, like that feels like an offense that can score some points as long as Cam Ward's good.
I think they still have some work to do on their offensive line.
Absolutely. Anything else or any other players that I missed here other than Deontay Johnson, as you calmly reminded us?
Waiting for Kurt Warner to show up and start playing again. With all these
Here
old
we go.
quarterbacks on this list.
Absolutely, it's possible. Drew Brees almost came back this last year, so why can't Kurt Warner? Gotta wonder if Tom Brady was called. Gotta wonder.
Can Tom Brady be the mentor for Mendoza?
Is he
But
allowed to be a
he's
player,
not allowed to play anymore. No, he's not.
coach,
He can't
broadcast?
play.
Can he run down from the booth calling Raiders games as the backup quarterback? Now entering the
No,
game, the former commentator, Tom
I
Brady.
don't. Yeah, no, he can't. I don't think he can play. I don't think he can coach.
Could you have a current player be a head coach? Like, that is a good question, and what that would look like would be pretty crazy.
It'd be crazy if the Bengals drafted a tight end at 10.
They deserve one. They deserve one. I don't really buy into Gasecki, but what do I know there?
I like Gesicki to an extent, but he certainly has a ceiling that caps his potential.
Absolutely. Anything
All
else,
right, Jeff.
sir?
I think that's it. I think that does it for this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you all for downloading and listening to this episode, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
You can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2 Fantasy and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Hi, everybody.